What is up, you guys? This is JP coming at you with another video. First things first, for anything fitness related, in-person training programs, head on over to jpfitnesspro.com. My training programs are going to be dropping July 1st, 2020, so that's July 1st of this year, on my website. Links in the description. If you guys want a free training program, I'm going to be giving away 3 free training programs to the people who are the most active on my YouTube live streams. So you don't need to watch all my live streams. You don't need to be there for the entirety of them. I just want to see consistency. So whoever is the most consistent on my live streams, as a way to say thank you, I'm going to let you pick a training program when I drop them. If you don't know which one to pick, I'll pick one for you, but I really appreciate those ones, and that's how I'm going to be able to give back. One more note is, before I go on to the video, is a lot of the top things I cover in this video I got from Greg Nuckols' article on conventional versus sumo deadlifts. So definitely check that out. That's going to be linked in below. It's on his website, Stronger by Science. He's a very smart guy. I got a lot from, I learned a lot from his article, so definitely I give a ton of credit to him, and I really appreciate all the work he does. So check that out and give it a read, because it's a really good article. All right, today's video is going to be about the sumo deadlift again. I'm going to be talking about one portion of the sumo deadlift that I did in a previous video, because in the previous video I kind of went a little bit more broad, but in this video I want to talk about one specific portion of that video and kind of go a little bit more in depth on that one portion, because it's the portion that's, I don't want to say problem, but for lack of a better term, it's causing the most problem with what I'm about to talk about. So this video is going to be about the sumo deadlift and how and why people say it's cheating. You probably heard it a lot. I just read this on a video the other day in a comment section. Everyone likes to say that the sumo deadlift is a cheating. Oh, it doesn't count because it's a sumo deadlift. And when they mean this for a sumo deadlift, they mean in regards to, well, they probably mean it in regards to any sumo deadlift, but 99% of the time it's when someone's doing a 1 rep max attempt. So I'll see someone in a video be lifting a lot of weight with the sumo deadlift, and a bunch of people in the comments are saying, oh, it's sumo, it doesn't count. It's sumo, it doesn't count. I'm sure some of them are saying that in jest or just to make a joke, but a lot of them are 100% serious and they say it doesn't count because, you know, they're doing sumo. Why is, why do people say that? And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But for those of you who don't know, a conventional deadlift is just where your hands are outside of your legs. So this is a conventional deadlift, the most common one. We'll see it very often. Conventional deadlift. A sumo deadlift is just where your hands are inside your legs when you do the deadlift. So legs out, hands on the inside of my legs, sumo deadlift, okay? So people say, and you probably could see it right there when I explain it, the main reason people say sumo deadlift is cheating is because you're moving the bar a shorter distance compared to a conventional deadlift. Now, while this was actually proven in a study, so that's one thing that I will note is technically they're not wrong. You are pulling the sumo, the bar less of a distance. There's a less range of motion in a sumo deadlift than a conventional, and this was actually proven in a study. But you can actually visually see this. So if you look at here, when I'm doing conventional deadlift, my feet right below me, I have to, this is basically the starting point before I bend down to grab the bar. I'm standing straight up, I have to bend down, grab the bar. So this is the range of motion of a conventional, okay? So for a sumo though, I have to widen my stance and bring my feet out. If you look at my height, I get a little closer to the ground. My hands get a little closer to the ground when I widen out my feet. Think about it. If you look again, standing a little bit more tall, my hands go up. I get a little closer to the bar when I go into a sumo. So you can visually see that you actually get closer to the bar, which means you're pulling the bar less of a distance with sumo deadlift. Now, you may be thinking right now, okay, well, if you're pulling the sumo deadlift less of a distance versus conventional, wouldn't that actually be proving their case that a sumo deadlift is easier? No, not exactly, and I'll explain right now. That doesn't actually prove that at all. Okay, you have to ask yourself is, when you're going for a 1 rep max attempt, and think about this real carefully. When you're going for a 1 rep max attempt, whereas most of this shit talking on sumo is for 1 rep max attempts, or when you're going really heavy for a 1 rep max attempt, what are you actually testing? think about that. And a lot of you may say, well, I'm testing how much weight I can lift maximally for one single repetition. And from a vague point, yes, you are. That's exactly what you're doing. But what you're really asking yourself is, remember, when you miss a lift, it's not because you were weak through the entire range of motion. If this is the entire range of motion of a sumo deadlift, probably not, but I'm just giving you an example. If this is the entire range of motion of a sumo deadlift, when you miss a lift, or it could be conventional too, this is just an example. If you miss a lift, you didn't miss the lift because you were too weak through the entire range of motion. You missed the lift because you were too weak through the weakest part of the range of motion for you. So think about that. You might have to rewind that and kind of think about what I'm saying. Because when I first read it, I was like, wait, what? Like, I had to reread it. And again, that's why reading this article that I'll link below is going to be perfect for you guys. Is you don't miss a lift because you're too weak through the entire range of motion. You only miss the lift because you're too weak through the weakest point of the range of motion for you. And for some of you, a good way to kind of make this click in your head is sticking points. When you're doing a lift, you have a sticking point. So think about it. Whether or not you get a lift is determined whether or not you can get past that sticking point. Now, sticking points vary from person to person based off of a lot of things, biomechanics, whether or not you have any muscular imbalances. But regardless, everyone has that point in a lift that is going to be the hardest, and that is going to determine whether or not you actually make the lift, not the rest of the lift, okay? So for a sumo, most of the time, the hardest point is off the ground, straight off the ground. So typically, if you can get the sumo deadlift off the ground for most people, you're gonna be able to finish the lift. For a conventional deadlift, the sticking point is right around the top of the shin or just below the knee. So if you can get the bar, getting it off the ground is not, the hardest part for most people for conventional. Getting it past this point is the hardest part. So that's why for conventional, you'll see it speed up, slow down, and then you'll start to see it speed up again, just like that. So once you can get it past the sticking point in conventional, for most people, you're most likely gonna finish the lift because you got past the hardest part of the range of motion. So when you're doing a 1 rep max attempt, you're actually seeing if you can if you're really asking yourself, am I too weak through the weakest part of the range of motion? If you're not too weak, you'll get past the sticking point or the hard part for you and you'll complete the lift. If you are too weak through the weakest point of the range of motion, then you are going to fail the lift. You're going to hit that sticking point. You're going to realize, okay, I'm too weak through the weakest point of the range of motion or the hardest part, and you're just not going to be able to complete the lift. So that's what you're asking yourself when you're really doing a 1 rep max attempt. Now, kind of connecting all this together is when you do it, let's just say that this is the range of motion for a conventional deadlift, because just to make it simple, this is the range of motion for a conventional deadlift. Now, let's just say that this is the range of motion for a sumo deadlift, because a sumo deadlift, like I said earlier, it is shorter range of motion, but it's about 25% less range of motion than a conventional. So if this is a conventional deadlift range of motion, this is a sumo deadlift range of motion, that's the totality of each of the range of motions of each of the respective lifts. Now, like connecting what I said in the middle of this video is, you are really asking yourself if you're too weak through the weakest part of the range of motion. So the portion of the lift that you're doing that determines whether or not you make the lift is a very small portion of the lift. Think about the sticking points and kind of connect this in your head. When you're doing the lift, the majority of the lift is not going to be, oh, am I gonna get it? Am I gonna get it? Am I gonna get it? It's just the sticking point that's going to really say, are you gonna get this lift or not? Because it's the hardest part of the range of motion. So when you're comparing, if this is conventional totality range of motion, and this is the total range of motion of a sumo, even though a sumo is less, for both ranges of motion, what's going to determine whether or not you get the lift is really only this much of the range of motion. The rest of it essentially doesn't matter, because if the hardest part is only this much, the rest of it's easier than the hardest part. So if you can get past the hardest part, you're going to be able to get past the easier parts of the range of motion. So this is what determines of the entire lift. For both lifts, this much of the range of motion, or roughly a very small portion of the range of motion, is going to determine whether or not you actually get the lift, not the entire range of motion. So even though you have to pull the bar further in a conventional deadlift, it doesn't matter because you're just pulling more of the easier portions of the lift. It's this much that's going to determine whether or not you get the lift. So regardless of how the range of motion of the entire lift, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter at all. So it doesn't matter that sumo's here and conventional's this much range of motion and sumo's here, because think about it, it doesn't matter because this much is going to determine whether or not you're going to complete the lift or not. And again, there is a little bit more to go in depth with this with the energy systems. Good point that Greg Nuckols makes. For those of you who know exercise science a little bit more in depth, is that you may have thought about energy systems in this. What if you gas out during the lift or something? What if the lift is so long that you gas out? Well, 99.99999% of lifts, one rep max attempts are going to be less than 10 seconds. And we have enough ATP and creatine in our muscle tissue to be able to generate maximal attempts up to I don't know, 10 to 15 seconds or something like that, or 10 seconds. So I don't think I've ever seen a deadlift go longer than 10 seconds in my entire life, ever. If they don't get it within 10 seconds, they don't get the lift. So energy systems and gassing out is not going to be an issue. Now, so that's answering that question. So to kind of sum that up is, you are going to make a lift based off a very small portion of the range of motion, not the totality of the range of motion. So the fact that you have to pull the bar a little bit further in conventional doesn't matter, because think of all of the range of motion as almost junk movement in a way. You can think of it as junk movement, and you get to that one point in the range of motion, that's the true test. And the true test portion of the range of motion is the same in the conventional and the deadlift. The junk range of motion, essentially, you can kind of put it up. I'm just coming up with terminology to help you guys understand this. The junk range of motion between a conventional and a deadlift and a sumo is the same. It doesn't matter if it's different, because that's the easy parts. The hardest parts of the range of motion are the same, or roughly the same, in both the sumo and the conventional. So now that I covered that and kind of got that out, and that's why sumo is not easier, because that's why it's not easier. I'm going to kind of cover one little thing, is because some of you may be saying, okay, well, so if I have to pull the bar further for a sumo deadlift, where does this get? Where is this going to make it harder? How is this going to make it has to be more difficult than the conventional in some way. I'm moving the bar a greater distance. Some of you may be saying, I can't grasp my head around that concept, that I'm moving the bar a further distance and it's not harder. It is harder if you are going for something like high reps. So if you and a friend or something are doing let's just say you're doing a deadlift challenge to see who can do 225 to 50 reps the fastest or something like that. A conventional deadlift, because you're doing so many reps, other energy systems besides your ATP CP system come in, like your glycolytic systems now starts getting involved. All these things, you're now you're testing other portions of your energy system, and other things become a factor. Gassing out, your cardiovascular system becomes a factor. And because for a conventional deadlift, like I said earlier, you're moving the bar a further distance, that extra distance that you have to move every single rep is going to affect things like fatigue when you're doing a bunch of reps. Okay, you are now going outside of the ATP CP bioenergetic system to other energy systems within your body. So if you want to kind of get your head around that, just understand that if you're doing repetition maximums, like lots of reps, conventional deadlift then has an argument that it is harder. It is harder to do with a bunch of reps, like 20, 30, 10 reps, those types of things with conventional versus a sumo. But when you're doing a 1 rep max attempt, which is what the topic of this video was, it is not harder. Sorry about the long video, had to flesh it out because I keep seeing it everywhere. Maybe I'll talk about other portions of this a little bit. I really like talking about this. If you guys have any questions, comments, leave them down below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.